Sometimes I get a reminder that certain things regarding skincare or hair care or your nails are very obvious to me as a dermatologist, but might not be obvious to everyone else. So today I'm going to be sharing some dermatologist insights that you may want to know about. I'm Dr. Sam Ellis, and I'm a board-certified dermatologist in Northern California, and I'm here to help you understand your skin and hair and nails and find products that work for you. So if you like that type of content, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. So the idea for this video actually started because I made a series on TikTok called Obvious to a Dermatologist, but maybe not everyone else, because there were lots of questions that kept coming up in my encounters with patients or in my DMs or just comments on my social media platforms where I was like, I didn't even think to mention that or talk about it because it feels so obvious to me as a dermatologist based on my training and experience. But in reality, like, the average person probably doesn't know this stuff, and it can be really helpful. So we'll just dive right into them. Number one, I want to dispel the myth that using moisturizer on your skin makes it lazy or makes your skin stop producing oil because you're putting moisturizer on it. I feel like I hear a lot of beauty influencers and sometimes skincare influencers talk about this. They go, my skin really got better when I stopped putting moisturizer on because I was training my skin to produce oil on its own. And I know that sounds great in theory, but physiologically, that is not how our skin works. The amount of oil that your skin produces is really based on two main factors, your genetics and your hormones. It is not responding to what is being placed on top of it. Now, if you're someone who naturally has oily skin, you may not feel the need to apply a moisturizer. Not everyone needs a moisturizer in their skincare routine, but the mere fact of not applying moisturizer isn't going to make you produce less oil on your own. Speaking of moisturizers, they tend to work better when you apply them within 5 minutes of bathing or showering. Moisturizers have three main ingredient categories. They have something called emollients that smooth the skin, but then they also have something called humectants that help bind water to the skin's surface. Now, you don't have to do this, but if you find that your skin is particularly dry and you kind of want to level up how your skincare is functioning for you, when you apply your moisturizer to damp skin, it essentially traps that water against your skin and makes it more effective. In dermatology, we call this technique soak and smear. We came up with a whole term for it because we recommend it so often, less so for your facial skin and more so for your body skin. You can definitely use this technique on your face, although if you have a more prolonged skincare routine, by the time you get around to your moisturizing step, your skin may not be damp anymore, and that's generally okay. We have a higher density of oil glands on our face, so we don't need to lock in that moisture as readily. However, the skin on our body has fewer oil glands, and so you want to basically be doing everything there to optimize the efficacy of your moisturizer, and applying it on damp skin will do that. I recommend this all the time for my patients who have eczema or atopic dermatitis. I just have them keep their lotion in the bathroom, and then as soon as they get out of the tub, we have them towel dry off and apply their moisturizer. And one final thing I'll say on the topic of oil production and moisturization is you cannot train your scalp to produce less oil by washing it less. I see this all the time on social media where people say, I trained my scalp to produce less oil, or you're washing your hair too frequently and that's making your scalp oilier. And physiologically, that's just not how it works. I know it's a great theory, but again, we have to look at the science. Your oil production is determined by your genetics and your hormones, which are not going to be influenced by whether or not you're using shampoo on a daily basis or a weekly basis. If you have an oily scalp or your hair tends to get greasy easily, rather than trying to train your scalp, it's okay to wash your hair every day or more frequently. If you stop washing your hair, you're going to get a buildup of oil, which is going to make you more prone to things like dandruff and an itchy scalp. Now, one thing I do find as a dermatologist who looks through a lot of scalps during my skin checks is if you tend to have an oily scalp, sometimes it's hard to get all of that oil out when you shampoo. So for my patients, especially those who have dense hair or really curly hair and they tend to be oily, sometimes I recommend a double shampoo or a double cleanse of your scalp where you're shampooing once really aggressively at the roots, you rinse it out, you shampoo again, and that can actually help lift off more oil, which sometimes helps you space out your hair washings. And it's not because you're producing less oil, but rather you are removing that oily buildup more effectively. Okay, let's move on to some other skincare things. I want to talk about retinol and retinoids in general. For many people who start a retinoid, whether it's retinol or tretinoin for the treatment of acne or anti-aging, there will be a period where your skin has to get used to it and you may experience some flaking or stinging or peeling, but generally over time, your skin adapts and you no longer experience those side effects. When you get to that point, that is a huge win. It doesn't mean that product has stopped working for you. It just means that you get to enjoy all all the benefits of it without the side effects. Sometimes for my patients, I'll give the analogy of weightlifting. When you first start lifting weights, you're going to get sore in the beginning. But after a while, you may not get sore from lifting those same weights. And it doesn't mean that weightlifting isn't beneficial for you anymore. It's just that your body has adapted. Also, if you are one of those very lucky people who never had to get used to their retinoid, like from the jump, you were able to use it every single day with no issues with flaking or stinging or peeling or redness, that is just a blessing. That doesn't mean your retinoid is not working. It just means you didn't get the side effects. Now, in that same vein, something else that's obvious to a dermatologist but may not be to everyone else is just because your skin has acclimated to that retinoid, it does not mean you need to continue to go up in strength to continue to see results. For example, all the time in my clinic, I have patients who are on prescription tretinoin 0.025%. That is the lowest prescription strength we offer, and it is super effective for anti-aging. And sometimes patients will come in and go, hey, Dr. Ellis, I've been using this lower strength for a while. I want to go up to 0.05 or 0.1. So I want to double or quadruple the strength of the tretinoin I'm using in hopes that I'm going to see better results. But clinical studies actually show that when you compare 0.025% tretinoin to 0.1, they actually offer the exact same benefits for anti-aging. So why would you want to use something stronger that could potentially be more irritating when you can get the same results for less? Now, where retinoid potency matters more is if you have acne. Studies show that if you increase the strength of your retinoid, you often can get better control of your acne. So if I have a patient who's able to use 0.025 tretinoin every day, they're still getting some breakouts, then we might bump them up to 0.05 or even transition them to a more potent retinoid like tazarotene. Whenever you're using a topical retinoid, the goal really is get you to your aesthetic or medical outcome with the lowest potency that we can do that with. So to drive this point home, I have been using tretinoin 0.025% for over 10 years. I never intend to go higher because I have more sensitive skin. I know that's just going to cause more irritation without any additional anti-aging benefits. All right, another thing that feels obvious to a dermatologist but may not be to everyone else is you should not be going to bed with your hair wet. Prolonged moisture on the scalp creates a breeding ground for bacteria and fungal overgrowth. And when you're sleeping, oftentimes your hair is sort of compressed against your head, so it's much harder for it to air dry. In addition to it being unhealthy for your scalp, your hair is also a lot more fragile when it's wet. So if you're putting it up and then going to bed, or you're tossing and turning all night on your wet hair, that's going to lead to things like breakage and split ends more readily. Now, whenever I'm counseling on skincare practices or hair care practices, I don't expect people to take it to the extreme. Like if you need to fall asleep on wet hair once in a while because you had a really long day and you need to shower and you have to go to bed, fine. I just think don't make a habit out of it because in the long run, that's going to do damage to your hair. If you're someone who likes to shower and wash your hair at night, like I definitely fall into that camp, what I typically will do is just run a blow dryer through my hair before I go to bed. That doesn't mean that necessarily my hair is 100% dry, but just by removing like 90% of the moisture, I know it's going to be a lot healthier for my scalp and my hair overall. Another thing you can do at night that feels obvious to a dermatologist is apply your antiperspirant. Before I delve into the reasoning for this, just a little clarification point. Antiperspirant works to block sweating, whereas deodorant just helps with odor. So when we're talking about using antiperspirant, we're really doing it for sweat control. When you apply antiperspirant, the aluminum salts within your antiperspirant go into your sweat glands and block sweating. So the reason applying antiperspirant at night can be helpful is most people sweat less at night. Now, obviously, if you're going through hot flashes, this is not going to apply to you. But if you sweat less at night, that really allows the antiperspirant to sit in the sweat glands and act most effectively so that when you're awake and going about your day, it's already blocking the sweat. If you try to apply your antiperspirant and you're already sweating, it's going to be way less effective. And again, some people can get away with applying their antiperspirant during the day. Like, that's totally fine. If that's working for you, go for it. But if you've been struggling with sweat production and you want to optimize how your antiperspirant works for you, try a nighttime application. And just a little aside, anytime I talk about antiperspirant on this channel or other social media platforms, I get lots of people going like, why would you want to block sweating? And isn't sweating healthy for you? And yeah, you're not blocking sweating everywhere. You're blocking it in a focal area. And if sweating in your armpits doesn't bother you and doesn't affect your day-to-day life, don't use it. But for lots of people, and I see this in clinic all the time, they either have hyperhidrosis, so they are excessively sweaty, or their sweat really impedes their ability to go about their day-to-day day without feeling self-conscious. So if that is you, it is not bad to block your sweat so that you can feel confident. So I know I've been mostly talking about hair and skin in this video, but I definitely have a little nail insight for you as well. The little white dots that you get on your nails or you see your kids get on their nails are essentially never due to a calcium deficiency or any other nutritional deficiency or internal issue. I feel like this is a myth that started a really long time ago. Like I remember looking at my nails in like high school and being like, oh my gosh, am I dying? But the reality is these little white spots on your nails are almost always due to trauma. Any type of white spot or stripe on your nail is called leukonychia, and these tiny little white dots are called punctate leukonychia. I feel like people don't realize how hard they are on their hands, whether it's just from like getting manicures or working in the garden or washing dishes and something bangs against your nail. Your nail can be really reactive to that trauma. Essentially, the nail plate itself gets a little air bubble in it, and that's what you see as white. Even though as a dermatologist, I often will think about nail changes when it comes to evaluating someone for a systemic issue like iron deficiency or a thyroid problem, generally just seeing nail changes is not going to be the main indicator that someone has that issue. If you just have a few little white dots in your nails and you feel fine otherwise, you're not going to have an internal issue. If you have something like lead poisoning, there are going to be a lot of other things going on with you. You're going to feel really crummy before you care about what's happening on your nails. The other thing is when you have traumatic punctate leukonychia, it's generally not going to involve all 10 nails. You might see it on a few of them. If you have white changes on all of your nails, I would recommend that getting evaluated. And one other thing to know is if you see a white spot in your nail, there's nothing you can do to heal that nail. Nail tissue is dead. You just have to wait for that nail to grow out and it will disappear. Something to note is prolonged water exposure does make your nails more fragile. So if you're noticing a lot of white spots in your nails, you may want to think about wearing gloves when you're doing chores like washing the dishes or changing over the laundry, or also just think about how often you're washing your hands. And the other thing you can do is condition your nails every single day by applying a little bit of oil to them. All right, I have two more things that are obvious to a dermatologist. If you like these and want me to do more of them, definitely let me know. And also if you're still watching at this point, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and you're subscribed to the channel. Something that is very obvious to a dermatologist, and you've heard me talk about this before, is not mixing anything into your sunscreen. Don't mix your sunscreen with makeup, with moisturizers, with serums, nothing. When you apply your sunscreen, you should apply it in its pure form. We do not do sunscreen smoothies, and this is for two main reasons. One, sunscreens need to set up and form a protective film on your skin, and when you mix anything into your sunscreen, you can disrupt its ability to form an even film. And two, some ingredients can actually destabilize the UV filters in your sunscreen, so you're actually inactivating the sunscreen before you even apply it. When I've spoken about this in the past, the two main questions I get are, okay, well, can I like layer things over my sunscreen? Like, can I layer two sunscreens on top of each other, or can I put makeup over my sunscreen? Yes, that is completely fine as long as you're allowing those layers to dry down in between applications. The other question I get asked is, well, can I use a foundation that has SPF 20 or my tinted moisturizer is SPF 50? Is that okay? And yes, it is, because that product has been formulated in a specific way and it has been tested to have the stated SPF that's on the bottle. However, I would not rely on a makeup product or even like a tinted moisturizer with SPF as your only sun protection. Part of getting adequate sun protection is applying the correct amount of product. And if you go in and apply your makeup as you would apply your normal sunscreen, it's going to look horrible. So what I like to do is I put on my normal sunscreen layer, I let it dry down, and then sometimes I'll go in with my foundation or my tinted moisturizer that also has an SPF. And if anything, I'm just getting a little bit more protection or more thorough protection, but I'm not relying on that tinted product to give me my main protection. And the last thing that is very obvious to me as a dermatologist, but may not be to everyone else, is do not leave your sunscreen in the car. I actually used to do this all the time because I was like, man, I am so on top of it. I even have a car sunscreen. But I recently made a video of all of the skincare mistakes that I've made in the past and would never make again. Check it out if you haven't watched it. And that was one of the main ones, because when you leave sunscreen in your car, it can actually break down the sunscreen and make it less effective. Sunscreen is only stable and active at a very specific temperature range. And if it gets too hot or too cold, your sunscreen becomes ineffective. So rather than leaving your sunscreen in a car, I recommend you either put a little sunscreen in each of the main bags that you use, or keep a little pouch that you can transfer from bag to bag that has sunscreen in it so that it's not getting left in your car to destabilize. I think we'll end the video here, but there there are definitely a lot more things that feel obvious, so if you found this video helpful, let me know if you want a round 2. Also, I'm kind of curious if there's anything that feels obvious to you based on your profession, like if you're a hairdresser or you work in sales that may not be obvious to everyone else, definitely put it in the comments. I'm so interested in reading those. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.